All right, welcome to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Fisher from El Monte PD in California. Chief Fisher has had 25 years experience in law enforcement, and I'm really excited to share his valuable insights on wellness. Welcome to the show, Chief Fisher. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Paige. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. We talked a little bit offline, and you really have a dynamic approach to wellness and how you're supporting your organization. And I would love to, give a little bit of context into the last 25 years. How did you get started in law enforcement? I know that you're second generation, correct?
Yes, yeah,
So give
yeah,
us a little background.
yeah. My father started in 1971 at the El Monte Police Department as an officer, and I grew up obviously with that lifestyle, with police officers around me and what have you. So I was able to, go to school, go to college out of state, and came back to California. Worked in a little different field for a little bit, but then realized that I wanted to come back home to working for a greater purpose, work in law enforcement, and serve the community and work with people around me that I feel I could trust that were also had similar beliefs and a higher purpose rather than just trying to make money or what have you. So that was kind of my calling back to law enforcement.
And I think that that's one of the greatest things about individuals who are in this profession is it is always like this deeper meaning behind why you're doing this job because it's an incredibly challenging career path to choose. And anyone I talk to, there's always that, I want to help people, I want to serve a greater purpose, I want to protect my community. Was there a specific why that kind of carried you throughout those 25 years that you referred back to in maybe some of the more challenging times?
Uh, I'd say the greatest why is that I was in the first part of college. So it was like 95, I believe. My father was working a task force with, it's called LA Impact, Regional Narcotics Task Force here in the Los Angeles area. He was assigned there for many, many years, but one of his partners just got off work and was doing some grocery shopping at a local Bonds and in San Dimas, I believe, and then got involved in an officer-involved shooting and was eventually killed. And was killed in a line of duty. His name was Louis Pompey, but he was one of my dad's partners at the time. So that seeing my dad kind of go through that, losing a partner, and seeing that side of my father that I never really saw at all. So that's something that kind of stuck with me and had that lasting blueprint and I think that greater service and wanting to serve and the ultimate sacrifice that Officer Pompey made, and how that affected his greater family because we were very involved. My uncle also worked the Glendora Police Department at that time, where Louis's home department was. So we were very interconnected. In fact, my uncle was his field training officer. And then, so my uncle was kind of a rough FTO, you could say. So I remember specifically as a kid when Louis was going through field training that my uncle would make the trainees wait in the car even though it was 100 degrees, and he'd come in and take a break to our house. But then my mom would make him like some sort of smoothie or treat or whatever, and I'd sneak it to the car for the trainees, and Louis was one of them. So I had that imprint on me, and then seeing that and how that all happened definitely. Had an effect on the why, as you asked.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing like how events in your earlier days and in your childhood can have such a lasting impact on why you do the things that you do and what you decide to do. And, you know, I truly believe that a lot of what I do today was because of the things that I had experienced when I was younger. And so I think it's quite incredible how, that event, although so tragic, and I can only imagine, what that did for your family and his family. has now set you on this trajectory to want to help and, wanted to be that person who can help and to protect and serve your community. So, it ended up being something that had maybe a little bit of that silver lining because it gave you a deeper purpose for what you do today. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I know when we talked a little bit, I asked you this question about, your dad was working in El Monte PD and now you do as well. And I asked if you had the opportunity to work together, and you said that you had maybe a short period of time where you did get to interact with each other on the job. And I thought that that was so special. And did you feel like at that time that was something that was really cool that you got to experience together?
Yeah, I know specifically there was one patrol shift. He hadn't had work patrol in years, but I got him to work and over came in and worked, and we drove around a patrol car for a whole shift together. And then he was involved near his retirement with our special investigations team when he came back to El Monte for a short period. So I had some interactions with him. But yeah, my dad, I think it's fair to say, was very highly respected person, never wanted to promote in the organization, loved doing line level work. That's who he was. So it made my life, his reputation made my life coming into El Monte PD pretty easy in that sense because of his reputation, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think like as I get older, I start to really value the time with loved ones and look at it in a different perspective because life is so short, and so having those experiences with family members and the fact that you were able to do that with your dad, I think is really special and something that you can take with you forever. So now you're the chief of police for El Monte PD. When did you become the official chief? What year was that?
That was towards the tail end of 2022, so November of 22.
Okay. And I know that in 2020, there was two officers that were involved or I would say involved in, who were murdered in 2020 within your agency. Could you share a little bit about that story and how that impacted you, how that impacted the department, and how that impacted what you do today when it comes to wellness?
Yeah, it was actually in 2022, earlier in the year. So that was
Okay.
in June of 2022. We lost two officers in a shooting on a domestic violence call, and then Chief Lowry, he was the actually the acting chief at the time, and then a day or two later was named permanent chief by the city manager. Um, but he was kind of quietly going through his own battle with a rare form of kidney cancer,
Mhm.
and it was, I believe, 2 months after that. In fact, it was August 15th, 2022, that he collapsed in our unit lot. And then I took over as an acting role, and he passed away October of 2022. And then I was named the official chief in November. So that's kind of how that all played out, at least the timeline of it. There's a lot
So
more.
a lot within a short period of time that was going on internally.
Yes, for sure.
And can you explain a little bit? So, obviously, both of those things, two officers being murdered, chief of police dying of cancer, how did that impact what you guys do now with wellness? I know that that was kind of maybe an extra push in the direction of like, what can we do better? Maybe some of the things that, went wrong, or how, some of the things that you could do better. And how did you as an organization recover from that?
Mhm. Well, I think we're still recovering. We're going to be recovering for a long time. So
Yeah.
we're just in the early stages of 2025 now. So I mean, it's these incidences that devastated us, and many more people than just those three. That Chief Lowry and Michael and Joseph, our two officers that we lost. So many. We were very interconnected as a family police department, and everybody was interconnected in different ways, and very close friends. So it had a huge impact on us and still is, but we were thankful in a way that we did have a peer support program in place prior to this. Prior Chief Reynoso, had a contract with a regional counseling team that was able to come in and fill that immediate role right away. But more than that, I think the support, especially from many the community, many different entities, but especially our regional law enforcement partners here in the Los Angeles area, was just tremendous. Really too much in a lot of ways, but the support there was great and helped us. And unfortunately, there's other departments that have had similar incidences in this area fairly recently. So they had some guidance and recommendations, and I think it didn't make things better, but it made it the pathway there for us to go towards recovery. But there's a lot of things we're working on. I can talk for hours and hours about that, but and we can get into a few of those. But that's kind of the nuances of what happened at that time period.
Yeah. And I know that, you talked about community support, and it's interesting
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like this week, especially, I don't know what it is about like last week and this week, I think the conversation of community and the importance of community support. Um, how do you maintain that community support? What are some things that you guys have done to, make it known to the community that obviously you're there to help them, but in return, where they have then helped you? Because that's something that I think a lot of people are saying, like community-based policing and community support is so important. Can you give your insights into that topic?
Yeah. Again, a lot of things that I just inherited as the chief. It's been going back for a long, long time here at El Monte PD with our community relations programs, whole community relations office that we have. But we provide one example is a torch. We call it torch, teaching obedience, respect, courage, and honor. It's a youth at risk camp that we do twice a year, a 10-week program in the fall, 10 weeks in the spring. We identify kids in our schools because we have 5 school resource officers in our different schools here in El Monte that, they're just maybe misguided, having some problems at home or what have you. They're not necessarily bad kids, but they could go down the wrong path. So our school resource officers and our partners with the schools, we identify these kids and we put them with their parents' approval into this camp. And it's on the weekends. It's part time. Saturday, at least Saturday, sometimes Saturday and Sunday for 10 weeks straight. But the parents have to be involved too. So it's just as much about parental counseling as it is dealing with the at-risk youth. And program, we have lots of programs. That being the core of one of our programs. That doing a program like that for generations now has helped build that trust, I think, in the community, that it's like, hey, the cops are out here to help us and try to help us overcome whatever problems that families may be having for their kids to make better decisions, and parents to maybe guide them along, be a little better parents. And that additional investment into the community, pays dividends down the road, because when things go south at the police department, like they did here at El Monte, we had the community come out and support us in return.
Yeah. And I don't know if we talked about this before, but I can deeply relate to what you just said, and it actually like meant a lot to me. And I don't know why I had like an internal reaction to that, because I was an at-risk youth. Like my parents were drug addicts and my dad was incarcerated for a number of years. And I wish that I had something like that. I wish that I had a program or a place to go that could show me that it's possible to strive to be better, and that the only option wasn't ending up like your parents. Because I feel like, at least from my experience, like that was where the bar was. It was like, as long as I don't end up like my parents, then like I'm okay. Or, the expectation from my surrounding family was, oh, she's probably going to end up like her parents. Like there wasn't really a lot of support of like, hey, like let's show you what you can be, and let's make sure that you continue going down the right path and you don't take this path of destruction like your parents did. And unfortunately for me, I mean, I definitely went down that path for a while, where I did start, choosing poor behaviors and friends, and kind of making really poor decisions in my life when I was younger. And I think it was because I didn't have a positive outlet or a support system that was there to show me another way. So I think that that's incredible that you guys do that because, you know, I wasn't a bad kid, but I had bad circumstances and I didn't have good examples. So I appreciate that you're doing that, and I would imagine that there are a lot of kids and families who have benefited from that, and have chosen a better path for themselves long term.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chief Lowry, who's the chief that passed away just before me, he we had these three traits that we call character, competence, credibility that he preached a lot, and I've carried on since his passing. But character, meaning that we owe who we are as police officers. And I give this speech every time we swear in a new police officer. We owe who we are as police officers to someone else besides us that got us to where we can pass a police background, where some of the recent presidents couldn't even do so. But we got to that level because not just maybe just our parents, maybe it's our grandparents, maybe it's a police officer, a teacher, aunt and uncle, someone else in the community that helped guide us, that put us in that right direction at the right time to live that lifestyle that when we go out in the community and serve and go for calls for service, that maybe not everybody had those same opportunities. So all of us take that into consideration when we're serving the community. Competence is our hard work. That once we become a police officer, we never stop learning, we never stop growing. We go to school, we learn, we read things, we always get better, a little bit better every day. And then credibility is that line in the sand that we know as police officers we certainly can't cross, because we cross that line, we can't come back. So we follow those three C's: character, competence, credibility. You'll go on to have a great career. So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And
Mm-hmm.
I do think that, like, obviously you hold yourself at a really high standard, and you hold your team at a really high standard. When I heard some of the things that you were saying, like, I also feel like you try to lead with empathy, and that's what I heard in that speech of, character, and knowing that, like, you got somewhere because you had good examples, and then trying to be that for other people, and
Mm-hmm.
having empathy for, situations, especially with, the torch program of, understanding that, like, sometimes people just need some support. And yeah, I think it's great. I appreciate that a lot. I keep going back to the at youth risk thing because I feel like I wish I would have had that. And I wish I would have had someone looking out for me like that, who,
Mm-hmm.
had that empathy, and that character that you talk about. Um, so fast forward, I know 20, you said 2022 is when everything kind of happened, and that was kind of the jump start of making sure, okay, like, we want to make sure that we have the resources in place, and you had a peer support team, and really focus on community policing, and doing good things within the community. Um, what are some of the other, I know you take a dynamic approach to wellness. What are some of the other things that you have done internally for wellness that you have found to be really successful?
Yeah. So one thing that we recently done is we've contracted with a corporate partner, O2X, who's it's basically a trainer, a physical fitness trainer, and we use their platform, their app platform for other you can yoga, I know it's kind of your thing, yoga, breathing, all that stuff is available through them. But we have what I like about why we chose to go through O2X is because we have that person here also. So you're walking, and Rudy's his name, for us go by Rudy, but he comes to us with vast amount of experience in the athletic areas, and we're interacting with Rudy, and he's walking around the hallways. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're gonna have to eventually look Rudy in the eye, and
Mhm.
you either have the walk of shame or the walk of guilt, or you have the walk, hey man, I've been doing good, or trying to improve in this area. So I think for us, and I think just because of maybe our recent paths or what have you, but this format for us has been very, very effective. He alters his work schedule to work with our night shift, our dispatchers at night. He'll go in there and help them um, find different ways just to move and stand and stretch and be healthier, because if people are stretching, we know the injuries are reduced. So we're excited to see in time maybe a reduction in workplace injuries, and just our overall health of our organization. So that's one thing that we've done fairly recently, within, well, less than a year now. So we'll see more as this continues, how effective it is, but the excitement is there. And then when in talking to Rudy, I walk over. He's just not too far from me, so we chat about different things. But we had you know, one of the dilemmas in police work is, busy lifestyle. You're working a shift, you pick up an overtime shift at night, and you didn't have a chance to pack a healthy lunch or whatever, the reason. Maybe you didn't do that, but it's 2 a.m. and you're starving. And the easiest alternative, of course, is to drive through McDonald's and get a Happy Meal or a Big Mac or whatever. But so what we did, we found a local partner in our region that provides has a vending machine that's now at our station that provides reasonably cost healthy meal prep plan, breakfast, lunch, dinner type meals, a little variety pack, and they come twice a week or more, maybe, and at least twice a week, and restock it. And that's also been well received, as, hey, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for our officers to and dispatchers and everyone who, when I say officers, I mean everybody that works in the police department, to be as healthy as possible.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but when I talk to agencies about meal prep stuff, it's not a cost of the for the agency, right? Like this is something where like your personnel are paying for the meals themselves.
Yeah. There's
Correct?
there's
Yeah.
a yeah there's a small minor, I think, monthly fee that we do pay with this vendor for the
Stocking
contract of
or
having them here, but it's very, very, very minimal.
yeah.
And the 95% or more of the cost, I would say, goes on to the cost of the actual meal that they're purchasing out of the vending machine.
And I ask that question because, I think that a lot of times when we think about wellness and wellness programming and implementing different things, that there's this misconception that, I mean, obviously it does cost money to do certain things, but there's this misconception that like everything costs so much money and it's impossible and it's not attainable. And when we hear stuff like this, it's like, you can provide healthy meals. Your employees are going to be paying for meals regardless if they're paying for it at McDonald's or if they're paying, for a healthy meal that's provided at the station. And so I think it's a good reminder that, there are affordable, reasonable options that you could partner with someone local to do some sort of meal prep plan. And the majority of that cost would be on the personnel and not on the agency. So it's something that you could implement fairly easily.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So that's one thing we've done. A couple other things that I've done is made it a point to have a one-on-one meeting with every single employee, from the newest police cadet to the most tenured officer, and just at least give them 15 minutes one-on-one. And these little meetings have been very, very successful. And a lot of people seem to be a little more forthcoming in a one-on-one setting, even if it's the chief, but to tell me things. And I'm just amazed at the information that I got out of these meetings to help me in being able to lead this department. So that's something we started last year. I started last year, and then we're just continuing to do. And it's just my assistant to schedule these meetings as it works out for me and the different people in our organization to make that done. And we just try to be active. We just had a baseball game. We won, by the way. We should
You
have.
were saying that you were going to win.
Yeah, I didn't think we were, because I was being razzed a little bit by some people from the other department that we played, but we did win. We hosted a little baseball game with our officers and another agency, and it was for raise money for veterans wellness, veterans affairs. We have the state of Almani has a lot of veterans housing facilities in the city that our city leaders have invested in. So we were able to raise some money for them and have a good time too. So it's nice.
Yeah, I know we talked about that. I thought that was so cool that you had a baseball competition between you and another agency.
Mhm.
And you were saying that you thought that you guys were gonna lose, and you didn't, so that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe for you, not for them. But I think that's another example of like how you can incorporate wellness in like an I would say easy, but like a cost efficient way, like that's wellness. Like if you can get, your agency and another agency together to do something physical, friendly competition, get outside, have that camaraderie, building morale, and you're raising money for veterans, which is great. And then that's also contributing to community support because your community is seeing you out in the community playing baseball doing, fundraising for veterans. It's just all loops back into wellness and how you can kind of think outside of the box and do things that don't cost a ton of money. And I think that that's like one of the biggest like pushbacks you always hear is like, well, we don't have the money, we don't have the budget, we can't do it. But that's another way that you could implement something.
Yeah, it was something that had a pretty big impact on me as a kid. Is I remember specifically going to different police events at a local park, and where different officers and their families were there, and we'd interact and have a barbecue or whatever the thing was, and it was a POA event or what have you. But as a kid, I remember that, and it had an impact on me. So again, like you said, it's low cost. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It just takes someone to organize it, put together, and get together.
And talk to me a little bit. There's two things I want to talk about, but first, the one-on-one meeting. I think that that's really, really cool. And you have over 100 employees.
Mhm.
So it's not, like there's five people. You have quite a few employees. And so taking the time out of your day to make sure that you have one-on-one conversations and you one are making it known that you care because there's a lot of people I've talked to that are like I've never talked to the chief ever. Like I've never ever seen them except for graduation. That's it. Like we don't see them really in the halls or anything. So for you to take that time to show them that you care, but also I think the important piece that I took from that is you're having these conversations with them to figure out what they need. And then that's how you're building this wellness program and creating that culture because you're actually listening to your people and talking to them and figuring out the individual needs of everyone. Is that what you have found? Is that you are, building that culture of wellness and really trying to understand the needs by doing that?
Yeah, I think so. I generally ask everyone a few questions, based on where they're at in their career. Usually applicable, but not always. But like, what can we as an organization do to help you get where you see yourself, the next
Mhm.
step? And then what are some things that we may be doing well, but we need to improve upon? Maybe we're not doing well that we need to change. And that this particular employee was the chief of police. What would you be doing that I'm not doing as a chief? So
Yeah.
those questions tend to get asked. They're more conversation starters, and the conversations lead in different directions. But yeah, it probably I think it does help overall. Just as you said, with building like a low cost way of wellness, because
Yeah.
it's important for an organization our size, and not every organization can do this. We have less than 200, so 180 employees, so we can make it work. We can, I can adjust my schedule, and we can make it work for have these short meetings. But much bigger than that, I realize it wouldn't work. Uh,
Yeah.
but for us, I think it's well suited.
Well, and I think sometimes like the little things speak volumes. And I think that sometimes just as people, we forget that sometimes it's just like the little things that you can do that really make a difference in someone's day, or set the tone for their career of, having that one interaction with the chief where, I was like, wow, like he asked me how I was doing and, like what the agency could do better for me. And like that really meant a lot. And like, and those things, I think those acts are also going to make an imprint on future leadership and how, you want to be as a leader. And so you're setting the tone for anyone else who, wants to um, maybe be a chief one day and, will start to implement those same strategies and the same efforts, if you
Yeah,
will. Yeah, so I think that's great. The other thing that you said earlier is, and I wanted to circle back to this, is um, a strong family bond. Can you talk about what you mean by, family wellness or home wellness or creating a strong family bond within the organization?
yeah. So we have a lot of interconnection. we do have several multi-generational or some sort of connection in Almani. So, a lot of people, maybe they went to school here, or they have some unique connection to Almani. Most of our people that we hire in sworn or civilian capacity has some sort of connection. Not everybody, but most. I think that's something that is a little bit unique to Almani. We have 100% retention rate for at least the last 10 years. I don't think we had anyone leave to another organization. So I think that's a good thing, or maybe the Almani suction is so strong it doesn't let people out. I don't know. But yeah, so and this is stuff that I've inherited, and I can't claim this is stuff that I'm doing. This is something that's been going on for a long time at Almani PD, and I'm just blessed to be able to kind of have that torch for a little bit and carry it on. But yeah, it's hard to put a finger on exactly what that is. I think what you said actually is that a bunch of the small little things is what's most impactful. I think we've been through tragedy. We've been like family. You can think you don't always get along, but by and large, I think when we need each other, we're there for each other, and that's been something very unique about our agency.
Yeah, and if anyone's listening who's not from California, maybe you don't understand the accomplishment of not having anyone lateraling, especially these days, is because I mean, I know kind of the landscape in California right now, like everyone's moving around and retention is really hard, recruitment is really hard, and there's a lot of lateraling going on. And so I do think that that's a huge accomplishment that you haven't had anyone lateraling. I think you said in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, at least 10 years, I believe.
I do think that that says a lot about the culture and the agency as a whole, because people don't want to leave. Like that's a direct correlation. If people didn't like it, they'd be leaving because it is so competitive that there's a lot of signing bonuses and different things that you can go and get elsewhere. So I do think that that is a testament to what you have done and then what leaders before you have done as well to create that culture.
Yeah.
I know that and I think that this is in the context of maybe retention or but there's just a few things that you had said earlier that I want to kind of touch on. That's really cool. You have one of the largest drone programs. And you also are really invested in like technology. Can you explain kind of what you guys are doing in that arena as well? Because I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So in tragedy, sometimes there's some triumphs, and I think we've been able to get a little bit more resources towards the police department way. And we do have a large drone program. I believe we have 36 drones and 17 FAA certified drone pilots that we deploy in the fields. We got big drones, little drones, and medium-sized drones. And the component and the reason for this is officer safety. So we want to make it as safe as possible going forward for our officers out in the field. And part of that is getting eyes where we need to, whether it's a drone that goes up in an attic when we're doing a search inside a building or structure, or just a drone overhead. And we're looking at many different areas. Aside from drones, we're actually building a real-time intelligence or real-time crime center right now. The city of Almani, through our city leaders, has invested about $1 million in these camera systems, and we're building out the actual center itself right now. And we've already have a bunch of Alpers, flock Alpers cameras, license plate readers, but this is going to be kind of that next level. And then being able to integrate with our companies, our private partners in the city of Almani, to the cameras that they want to share, and incorporating those into our crime center to help bring crime down and make it safer for our residents.
I love that you kept saying safety because I do think that safety is a part of wellness, right? Having the tools to be able to do your job without the added stress. So there's already a lot of stress, but like how can you reduce that stress by having tools to promote safety on the job? And there was another thing that we talked about before that you guys did in terms of tools and resources to give your officers out on the streets. And one of them was an anti-choking device. And there's kind of a cool story behind that if you're willing to share, that as being one of the other tools that you provided, in the context of wellness and safety and de-stressing a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it just by chance, a retiree from ours knew someone that was selling the LifeVac anti-choking devices, and I was in the office. They were in the area, so they stopped by and basically gave a sales pitch. And we decided that, hey, this seemed like a pretty good thing for our officers to carry out there, and did a little research and decided it was worth the purchase. So we made a purchase of about 200 of these devices to put in our patrol cars, detective cars, and we put them in, like our Parks and Rec areas too, for the other city departments as well. But within about 6 weeks of issuing them in our police cars, we had an incident happen where a kid was choking a piece of candy, 8-year-old boy. And within 21 seconds, one of our officers arrived and was able to save the kid's life, who was obviously choking. The body cam footage was very dramatic and very obvious. The boy was turning blue, and it was very apparent what was going on. But the parents, it's just a very good, hardworking little family here in El Monte. The parents were so impacted by this that they wanted the body worn camera footage of this incident release, full release to the media, where normally we wouldn't have video footage of a child. We release that unredacted, but they signed off. We had to create a little document through our city attorney's office, and they signed off on it, and it was put on the news and went I don't know, viral or what. It was out there quite a bit. And I'm told through the LifeVac people, it had a pretty big impact on them being able to get these devices out to more police agencies out there. So it was a good thing, something that good that, just by the grace of God, I think that we have those in our car at the right time. However that happened, that's beyond me, but that worked out. And then, hopefully, because of the additional coverage of these devices out there, maybe some more lives will be saved.
And I think, when you told me that story, it's also like being able to get positive media and, videos out there of you guys doing great work and saving lives. And that goes back to that community support and, having your community get behind you guys in the good work that you're doing. And so I'm glad that, they're obviously glad that you had those resources, and that there was something that came out of that after the fact of one, like how can we make sure that officers have the tools to be safe on the job, drones and all the other things that you're doing, have the tools to be able to help save lives in the community, whatever that may be. I know you said you have AEDs and, anti-choking devices. But then when those things happen, now you have even more community support because, they're seeing the good work that you're doing. So I think that it all ties in. It's like all full circle and ties back into wellness because now you have good community support and that takes less stress off of the officers as well. So
Yeah, well, I think too, giving our officers as many tools as we can, that we possibly can, because before we had the anti-choking device, the officer showed up. We just showed up with, a few hour block of Heimlich maneuver. And, the Heimlich is the first thing that, Red Cross says that we do. And then if that doesn't work, then we revert to the LifeVac anti-choking device. But it leaves you feeling kind of helpless in a lot of ways because, you only get every 2 years, you only get a few hours of this training. But knowing that you have all that we know is possible to try to save a kid's life, but there's not much more impactful for an officer than having a mom hand you their child who's lifeless and saying, help me. Well, that impacts the officer as well, big time.
100%.
So them knowing that when they're out on patrol in El Monte, that we're trying to give them all the tools and resources to help them do their job as best as possible. And I think it helps in their overall mental wellness as well.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. One last question for you, and then I'll kind of let you take the floor if we missed anything after that. But What words of advice, in the context of wellness, what words of advice would you give someone who is earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that helped you in your career.
I think developing a disciplined program sooner, being more disciplined in your job. A lot of officers when they start out in police work, I think it's just so it's fun, exciting. You're working overtime, you're doing all these different details, and it's really easy to lose sight and lose track of what you need to do for the long haul and maintaining whatever your disciplined approach is. That's going to be different for so many different people. Getting up, working out in the morning, doing this, but being regimented and knowing that as family oriented as we are as in a workplace here in Omani, but that work is still just work, and you work to provide for your family, your love, whatever, your friends, whatever you got going on at home, and that ultimately everybody is replaceable. I'll be replaced. Everybody will be replaced, and that's what the organization is supposed to do, so that you can. I guess like work ultimately does not love you back, right? So you have to have that bigger purpose and be disciplined in your approach. The sooner you figure that out, and still doesn't mean you're not friends with coworkers and interact and have a good time and go to a baseball game and do all these things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're supposed to be here at whatever police department for your career, which is really in the big scheme of things a short time period, and then you move on, or you do something else, and someone else is hired after you to replace you and to carry on that torch. But that's that disciplined approach and greater understanding. I think the sooner our employees figure that out, this is the more balanced they tend to be going forward. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and I love those words of advice because
Mm-hmm.
one, I think that discipline trumps motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's sometimes where you're not going to feel motivated, but if you can lean back on your discipline and the routines that you've created, then that's going to set you up for longevity. But I loved your advice of like the job might not love you back in the same way because I have experienced that in my own life where like I had a career path where I gave everything. I did everything for it, including missing my grandma dying because I thought that the career was more important than what I had going on in my life. And I was so dedicated to that. And I'm not saying don't be dedicated to your work and to your profession. I think that, it's important to, be there when you're there. But I have a lot of things I regret in my life of thinking that my career was more important than my life. And when I ended up leaving that career path, nobody cared. And
Yeah.
it was a hard reality because, you're like, wow, like everyone loves me and everyone cares. And like, how can they go on without me? Like they can't go on. Like everyone's, going to be in shambles. And then you leave and they maybe remember you for a little bit, but eventually everyone has their own lives and their own things that are going on. And I think when you can realize that like, yes, be dedicated to your craft and, do the best that you can. But there's also other things that are important, and I would argue more important at times than that. And including family. Like I said, like I walked away from my grandma's deathbed to go do an event. And now retrospectively, because at the time I was like, this is so important. Now I'm like, wow, that wasn't important at all. So I love
Yeah.
that advice. And just realizing that, you know, you do have a life and that is also important to focus on. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So just to add on that just a little bit, I
Yeah.
think everyone that I work with here knows I'm married. I got 5 kids, so I have a large family, and my kids all are all active, playing sports and involved in stuff. So I have a great team around me that helps me. After hours, I'm here a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I got a great support team that helps me, whether it's the on-duty watch commander, captains, administrative lieutenant, and others to help El Monte PD be represented when it needs to be represented for things that are happening on the weekends. If my kids have a baseball tournament, I can't be there. then I can rely on my team to represent the El Monte PD, which helps. But I think also the officers and employees, when I say officer, I mean all employees, they see that too, and they realize that the chief has other priorities beyond the PD, and that
Yeah.
if they don't have those same priorities, maybe they should too. So it's kind of the underlying message, maybe a little bit, even when I'll put out a text or whatever, thank you for this, for being involved in this event. I apologize I couldn't be there, but this was the reason why, and maybe a little picture of my kid getting a ring at a baseball tournament, and this is what I was doing. So I think that's just more kind of subliminal away in a way, but kind of saying that, hey, you too should have similar priorities. Work, you shouldn't be at work 100 hours a week, working your shift and overtime like crazy. You should have something else that you're really working for. So,
Yeah. And I
yeah.
think, like you said, it sets the tone. It's
Mm,
like, oh, like Chief cares about his off time and his family and, is missing some maybe things that he would like to be at because he's prioritizing other aspects of his life. And I do think that that sets the tone and it takes that pressure off where people then feel obligated to do things. It's like, no, it's okay. Like if you can and you can be there for your family, like we encourage that. And it sounds like that's what you're saying. And I know you said like subliminally, but that's what you're saying. That's the message you're putting out there is like, hey, like I value my family and I want you to also value your life outside the job.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Mm.
Anything we missed, anything that you want to say or highlight? I mean, that's all I have for you, but if there's anything we missed, you have the floor.
We covered a lot. I just want to thank you for doing what you do, and having these conversations, and hopefully trying to make people in policing better, because we haven't been very good at the people in policing for a long time, and really focusing on our people and investing in them, and encouraging that, investing in them, but more so helping them invest in themselves. And that's just been a long time coming, because I've seen kind of like the tail end where I came in on the late 90s, and the police, we did things wrong just about 100% of the time in a lot of ways as far as wellness. And I've seen it change so much for the good. And I want to thank you and the people you're also do what you do in furthering that cause. So yeah, I
I
don't know. I can't
appreciate
think.
that.
Yeah, can't think of anything else. The one thing I want to bring up. Yeah, a couple things that I'll bring up real quick that I think help bring me a little bit of resilience growing up. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and my father's family is from Michigan. So I grew up as a Detroit. You can see back Detroit,
I was going to
Michigan.
ask what that was all
Yeah,
about.
Detroit Lions sports fan, like hardcore, like ingrained, multi-generational in my family. But I've been thinking about this a little bit, especially since last week when the Tigers got swept by the Dodgers. But I think that had a little bit of a positive impact too, because it helped make me tougher in a sense as a kid, and learn some things as not going along with the flow. The Tigers or the Lions haven't been doing good till recently, but the Detroit sports teams, the Pistons back in the day, were doing good. Then they're like, oh, you're riding the bandwagon or whatever. But you'd have to stick up for yourself. Say, no, I'm a multi-generational Detroit sports fan. This is who I am. When they're not doing good, you still stand by your team. And some of those life lessons, I think, of being an outside city sports fan in the city that you live in, kind of, I don't know, it made me a little tougher, and being able to stick up for myself and chime in different ways. And one other thing, I was highly involved in competitive shooting, the USA shooting, Olympic style shooting events. And I actually went to college on a shooting scholarship at Murray State University in Murray, Kentucky. So I was able to get a college scholarship out of it. And it wasn't the best, didn't go to the Olympics or anything like that, but I got to be pretty decent at it. But the lessons I learned in an individualized sport, because I played baseball most of my life as a little boy growing up, but the lessons I learned in individualized sport were something so individualized that it's so micro focused, and once that bullet is downrange, you can never pull it back. But the lessons you learn in individualized sports the breathing control that I had to do. We used to, when at the Junior Olympics, we go to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and sports psychologists would give us lessons, and we'd lay down on the range with a little thing over our eyes, and they go through a whole shooting match mentally, and that was just as exhausting as physically going through the event. But things that I learned as far as mental focus through the shooting sports was extremely beneficial, and it's helped me maintain focus and prioritization as well. So
Glad you brought that up actually, because there's a few things I wrote down. Like one, in the sports team aspect, like you learned loyalty and like a belief in like the marathon, like the long haul success. And so I think that that does teach you something of like, hey, like I'm gonna keep, being loyal to the cause because I know that eventually like it'll pay off, hopefully.
mm,
Fingers crossed. But the individualized thing, it's interesting because one, you have to have a belief in yourself, right? You have to have the confidence and the belief in yourself that you can do it. But then the emotional regulation piece to it, I think, is really interesting. And I don't know if you knew that you were doing this at the time, but that emotional regulation, the breath work, right, to calm the nerves, to be able to then effectively do the task at hand. But the visualization practices that you did, this is something. So fun fact about me, I don't know if you know this, but I used to be a professional skydiver way back in the day. Like I was very young, but I trained military. And we would do visualization practices, very similar, where the entire time up to altitude, you were visualizing everything that could, the sensations of everything, the task at hand, you doing this successfully. And you would do that over and over and over again the entire time. And sometimes this would be, 15 minutes to altitude. So you were like repeating this like 60-second thing 15 times in your head as this visualization. And the more you could visually imagine you doing this thing correctly, then the more effective you were in real time. Like what word am I thinking of? Like real time
application.
action
Yeah.
application. There you go. Thank you.
Mm,
And I think that that is a really, really cool thing that you learned. And it's something that's actually very, very successful.
mm. Yeah, I think it had a huge impact on my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like you can visualize yourself doing like you can visualize worst case and best case things. But typically I find the most beneficial is to try to focus on like best case scenario, be prepared for worst case scenario, like be in your training, be prepared for that. But really trying to visualize yourself doing the thing correctly and effectively. So yeah, I think that's really cool that you did that. You didn't tell me that before.
Yeah, I just took that out, but there's so many things, like I said, so many different things we can talk about, but I think
Yeah.
those are two important ones that I left out earlier. So
Well, thank you for sharing. And again, thank you
mhm.
for your time. I really appreciate it. I love all the things that you're doing at your organization and the emphasis that you have on wellness. And I appreciate you trusting me and, coming on the podcast. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it, Paige.